Arbitrage betting is the best side hustle you can do for 2026. I say this as somebody who has made over $30,000 from arbitrage betting in the last year alone, and I paid for my entire patio in my backyard using just arbitrage betting during the NBA playoffs last season. Now, as I'm making this video, there's only 3 football games left in the entire season, but the NBA is an absolute gold mine because of all the player props that are out there and how many games are going on every single day. So you make sure you want to watch this video, even if you haven't typically bet on the NBA in the past. I'm not going to waste your time, so let's get right into this. For all of my arbitrage plays, I'm using this tool called OddsJam. Now, they have lots of other tools like Positive EV, Sharp Money, a bunch of other things here, but I'm going to be talking about arbitrage in this specifically. This is what I do most of, and this is where I've made the most money. This is also, in my opinion, the most beginner-friendly way because it's a lot more palatable and it's not as risky, quote unquote, as EV or Sharp Money, because arbitrage is risk-free if you get the plays actually in. Now, I know this sounds too good to be true, so let me explain what arbitrage is first so you can see an example of it. Then I'm going to go through my settings and some different beginner and more advanced tips that I use to actually make the most money doing this. So you can see here on the screen, for example, we've got Domantas Sabonis to get a double-double, and we have the DraftKings for one of the books and SportsZeno for the other. Now, we can go ahead and we can choose what sportsbooks we have access to, so you only see relevant plays to you. So here's the math behind this arbitrage opportunity, right? So you can see here, we've got Sabonis over 0.5 double-doubles. We put $13 on it. We're going to get paid out $33, okay? Now, if we put $20 on the other side, again, we've put in $33 total dollars now. We're going to win $33.79 here for a 86-cent profit, aka 2.54%. Now, obviously, this is not that much when you're actually looking at the pure number of profit you're making, but 2.54%, think about it if you were trading stocks or doing any other type of investment. If you were able to make that guaranteed every day on every play, you would put as much money as possible into this. And again, remember, I typically am doing 3 to 4%, so I really wouldn't even do a play like this. And live, I would do 3 to 8%. I've had Arbs as big as 15% in here. And again, this is just with a $13 stake. Let's say here that we're going to go make this 200. Well, now you've won $8 off of this, right? And again, this is a very lower tier ARB. I'm making this video at like 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. So obviously there's not a ton of action going on right now. There's not live plays that I can show you, but you can see in the YouTube videos that I've done that there are tons of live arbitrage opportunities. I've got them on this YouTube channel. You can go and watch me actually place these live to see my system as well. So you can see that this is a 2.5% ARB. Now me, typically, if it's pregame, I'm doing anywhere from 2 to 4% ARBs, but if you're doing live, I'm anywhere from 3 to 8% arbitrage per play here. Now, again, you can go ahead and change this to whatever you want. So if you bet $500 aside, you put that in. If you bet $20 aside, you put that in. I would suggest when you get started, I would just do $20 aside to get used to the actual pace and the rhythm and what system best works for you. So again, an arbitrage opportunity is basically a risk-free profit. Now, there is risk obviously involved of getting these plays in time because they will move, especially when you're betting live. The markets do move fairly quickly. So that is the risk involved here. I don't want to misstray anybody. I don't want to mislead anybody and let you think that there's just no risk involved. I would be lying to you. There is some risk involved, but it's simply in getting the plays in. Once you have these both locked in, you are guaranteed to profit just like I showed you. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to show you the different settings that I've got set up. So these are the sports books section, and you just obviously select the sports books that you can go ahead and use, right? You only want to choose ones you have access to. Otherwise, you're going to get plays that aren't relevant. Something you could do at the beginning, right? Let's say right now you only have FanDuel and DraftKings set up, but you have access to some other books. You can click on those other books, right? Just to see, hey, are there more plays if I'm using these books versus DraftKings and FanDuel? Because that will allow you to obviously get more arbitrage opportunities down, which the name of the game is getting as many as possible here. I, on a good day of NBA, will hit anywhere from 28 to 40 of these plays. So the more books you have, the more opportunity you have. I don't change anything here as far as min-max odds, just because, again, it's an arbitrage opportunity. You don't need to do that. This is where you would go ahead and change that percentage. Again, typically, I would have this set at 3% because I want 3 to 4% for pregame, and I want anywhere from around 3 to 8% for the actual live. So I always move the minimum to 3. Maximum I don't ever change because I don't want to miss out on a potential, 10% arb because I've got 8% in here. I don't change anything as far as it goes with DVIG settings. Leagues here, I suggest doing the main sports. I don't put soccer on because there's so much international soccer going on that it can flood your timeline here if you put this on. So I don't do soccer or cricket. And I also a lot of times won't do golf or tennis, as you can see down here, because again, there's so many plays, especially if I'm trying to focus on the NBA, that I don't want to actually go ahead and see those because it's going to boggle me up. And something I highly suggest, especially if you're a beginner with this, is doing the leagues that you know a little bit more about. So right now, obviously, basketball is the main sport going on. NFL, there will be 2 games on Sunday in the Super Bowl, which will have arbitrage opportunities. But if you know basketball players, for example, this is going to be a lot easier to understand, especially because there are one-click bet options that books have, and then there are not one-click bet options. I'll explain that in a second, but it'll make it a lot easier to navigate through the books. I would never be able to find half the soccer teams they're talking about, especially if they're overseas, and sometimes they're even in different languages, so that's why I have those off here. Now, within these, you can obviously click the leagues that you want as well. I typically don't mess around with this a ton, just because, again, I will go ahead and I'm mainly focused on the main big sports in America. Now, as far as market goes, I like to have all 3 of these selected, but once I go to the live option, a lot of time I will just focus on player props here, and that's because the live lines for like alternate markets as far as alternate spread, alternate quarter overs, alternate quarter totals, right? Things like that, they can pop up and go away really quickly. So I don't mess with those a lot because that can leave you an opportunity where A, you might not get the play in and you're at risk now of losing one side of the arb because you couldn't get the other side in. And B, it's just, again, flooding the timeline with opportunities that are not actually going to be there for more than a couple seconds. So it's a waste of time, in my opinion. One thing we can do to circumvent that, though, I will show you here, is only available on the live setting. So if we click on live, we can actually go over here and we can look at in-game status, and then you can turn off live and only have stoppage. So what this means is there's a stoppage in the game. So maybe there's a timeout, maybe they're at the free throw line, maybe they're reviewing a foul, right? This is helpful because these plays are much more likely to be up for a longer period of time versus live. The moment LeBron James, for example, scores a bucket, that live line is going to change and it moves insanely quickly. So DraftKings and FanDuel, you might still be seeing the odds from before he scored that basket, and an arbitrage opportunity will show up, and then it'll go away like 5 seconds later. So again, it can flood the timeline with a lot of opportunities that are not actually there. I'll go back and forth on whether I have this on or not. I'll be honest, at this point for me, I keep it on, but then I change the market to just go to player props so I can avoid some of these other ones. But I'm more advanced. I've placed thousands of arbitrage opportunities at this point, so I can really look at a line and know, okay, this is worth actually even clicking in or not. Date range, I like to stick it at today just because I don't want to bet on something that's 5 days from now, especially if I'm a beginner. Maybe I have a lower budget here because that's going to tie up my money. And the real power here is actually rolling over your bankroll multiple times a day. So for example, with the NBA, games start at 7 o'clock. You could bet on those 7 o'clock games, and by the time those games are done and the later games start, you could reinvest that money that you just won back into the later games. So now if you have a $500 bankroll, you spend it all in that first window of games, and then you spend it all again in that second window of games. So it's not like you have actually a $1,000 bankroll because you've gone through that $500 twice, aka you'll make twice the money from your ARBs. And you're not able to do this if you're betting on things 4 days out and spending all of your bankroll on that. Now, game, I won't use at a point like this because I'm not as focused on singular games. When the NBA playoffs come on, I will tend to use this game thing because I don't want to see any of the other fields other than the NBA playoffs. So I will type in, maybe Thunder or Miami or Boston because I want to see that specific game. But otherwise, unless you're focused on a specific game, you don't need to do this. Now, these bet warnings here is another feature you can use. So show previously placed bets. I would suggest you should not be placing the same ARB multiple times in a given game. That's going to flag the sports books that you're potentially doing this, and that's going to give you a better chance of getting limited. So I tend to stay away from that, even if it's a great ARB. Conflicting bets is not as big of an issue with ARBs, but I still would stay away from those if possible. Same game bets, I have no issues on. I've placed, 30 ARBs in a single game before and not run into issues. And then risky bets, I actually like to keep this on just because some books, not the big ones like DraftKings or FanDuel, but some smaller ones will avoid bets because their lines were so wonky during the game. So you want to avoid this. If you see a 40% ARB pop up, you don't even want to go after it because there's a big chance that that is voided. And then one side goes away and the other side stays because one book didn't void it because it had the right lines. And then you get potentially hurt because of that. Now, earlier I was talking about one-click bets, right? So how that works here is if I click on this bet button, it's going to take me into FanDuel and it's going to actually go ahead and load in this bet for me. So all I have to type in is the wager, right? And so I don't have to find this player. I don't have to go to the game. I don't have to click on assists. I can just go ahead and actually place that bet right then and there. Now, you'll see that not every one of these has this. Some have game, right? And others will have site. So that's what I was talking about when I said I would stick to the sports initially that you know at least somewhat, because if it clicks on game and it just takes you to the general game, well, now you're going to have to find that player and you're going to have to find the stats and you're going to have to move quickly in order to get that arbitrage opportunity in. So that's why I always suggest to people, especially when you're getting started out, at least know something about it. At bare minimum, right, you should be speaking the same language. Because like I said, with soccer, there's a lot of them that are in a different language because they're overseas team. So it's just not even worth for me to look at them because I'll never be able to find that. So this is a breakdown of how to arbitrage bet in 2026 using OddsJam. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Also, if you want to try out OddsJam and get a 7-day free trial, the first link in the description will be a link that you can try to test out OddsJam with. And if you use the code Clark, you will get 35% off as well. So make sure you do that. Again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. I want to answer everything that you've got. I know this can be a bit confusing for a new arbitrage bettor. It was confusing for me when I got started, but now, like I said, I'm at a position where I've made nearly $50,000 from arbitrage betting, and I haven't even done this for a full year at this point. So I appreciate you guys watching this video. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for more videos like this.